It's Monday, December 13, and time for your Barbados Today Evening News Update. Barbados now has 400 new justices of the peace. The new officers were installed this evening at a brief swearing-in ceremony at the Wilde Gymnasium, where President, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, administered the oaths of allegiance and office. Prime Minister Mia Mottley urged the new JPs to move beyond their traditional roles and get engaged in helping to build up Barbados, particularly at the community level.
That it cannot be left to the just under 1,300 police that we have, or the soldiers that we have, or the judges that we have, or the magistrates that we have. It has to be the responsibility of each and every one of us, irrespective of where we sit in our leadership positions. Those leadership positions may be in our families, maybe in our churches, maybe in our communities. And for you now, they are definitely across your community, because you have formally accepted the oath of office that gives you certain powers, but more than the powers, gives you the respect of your peers and your family. This is important because if you can leverage that respect to help us build out this nation as we should, then we shall have a better country and we shall have better opportunities for our children.
She also appealed to the JPs not to swerve from their commitment to duty.
Because whether the violence is original violence or vigilante violence, it is unacceptable in our landscapes, because let he who is without sin apparently also cast the first stone. But above all else, the law does not give you the right to impose your version of justice on other persons. That is why the police court and the courts exist, in order for us to have a transparent system that is above all other considerations of partiality. And that is why the oath which you just took speaks about acting without fear or favor. And it is critical that you remember this.
Lawmakers in the upper chamber today stamped their approval on the Fair Credit Reporting Bill. During today's debate, Opposition Senator Crystal Drakes called for better regulation of banks, as she stressed the need for fair and ethical standards within the lending sector. She expressed concern that there was currently an imbalance of power and says banks must be held accountable.
Because we're holding persons, the individual, we're holding them account by passing this legislation here today. Because if you don't have the right credit score, Mr. President, the likelihood of you being denied access to credit is a lot greater after this bill has been passed. So on the other side of that relationship, I am hoping that the government finds it imperative to draft legislation that also calls for fair and ethical lending standards in Barbados. Because, Mr. President, what has to happen in the 21st century, as a lot of things move and shift in this transition period due to COVID, banks now have to become invested in the real sector and driving the real economy, because there is a disconnect at the moment. And we have to promote, we have to reward lending agencies that are going to consciously use the monies that are within their facilities, Mr. President, to create positive social, ecological, and cultural change, and not just rely on profits as their standard for success.
Government Senator Lynette Holder welcomed the new bill, noting that it will help to develop the financial market and provide the vulnerable the opportunity for a fair hearing and the ability to access credit. She, however, expressed concern about the $50,000 penalty for credit bureaus that breached the law.
So I believe it should have been higher, because any contravention to this act, sir, giving out information illegally on clients, I don't like the words, they're the subject, but giving out information or breaching in any form this particular bill, sir, in my view, is a serious offense. So when we have, for example, at section 20 8, it says that a credit bureau which discloses data subject information in contravention to this section is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $50,000. Sir, I have seen legislation come before us with heftier fines. Heftier fines, sir. And I believe that if a credit bureau contravenes this act in any form, there should be a much stiffer, as we say in Bajan parlance, a much stiffer penalty than $50,000.
And now for today's COVID-19 update, a significant drop in new infections were recorded on Sunday. 50 people, 20 males and 30 females, tested positive from 864 tests conducted by the Besta Santos Public Health Laboratory. The new cases comprise 10 persons under the age of 18 and 40 who were 18 years and older. There are 239 persons in isolation facilities and 1,680 in home isolation. One woman, aged 67, died at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital's Accident and Emergency Department on Sunday. She was unvaccinated. Total deaths stand at 253.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Hi, my name is Michelle Thompson. I'm a visually impaired person. I am also a member of the National United Society of the Blind of Barbados. I am vaccinated. I took the vaccination due to the fact that I am diabetic, I'm asthmatic, and I also have high blood pressure. I had no side effects. Everything went calm and smooth, as my doctor said it would go. Please, people, go ahead and do the right thing.
Let's roll up our sleeves and get back to living.
To regional happenings, Trinidad and Tobago confirmed its first case of the Omicron variant. Health Minister Dr. Terence D.L. Singh disclosed today it's an imported case which is under investigation after it was revealed that the patient had a positive PCR test but was still allowed to board the flight.
It's a female, that's as much as I can say. It's an imported case. This person came into Trinidad and Tobago. Flight originated in New York. And this is the disturbing part. In New York, the person was allowed to board a flight with a positive PCR test. Person then traveled to Panama, where they presented a negative antigen test. So a positive PCR test in contravention of our TTPAS regulations. And the Minister of National Security and myself met this morning. We will be providing to the Minister of National Security the person's name, the airline, because they have some liability in this, and the person for doing what they did. Luckily, our Trinidad Port Health picked up the fact that this person was allowed to board with a positive PCR test. So the last chain, or the last barrier, or the last check and balance in Trinidad at Piarco worked. And I want to congratulate our Port Health officers, who again have been doing a wonderful job in screening passengers coming in. The person was immediately isolated in a step-down facility and continues to be isolated. In keeping with international protocols, when you have an incident like this on an aircraft, the protocols are that all persons within a 2-row radius, which is 2 rows ahead, 2 rows behind, and 2 rows to the side, have been quarantined at home. Luckily, all those persons had positive PCR tests negative PCR tests. All 14 of those persons immediately around those persons, 2 rows in front, 2 rows behind, and 2 rows each to the side. All have negative PCR tests. All are fully vaccinated. They are in quarantine and will be monitored.
On the international front, at least one person in the United Kingdom has died after contracting the Omicron variant, as officials warn the new coronavirus strain is spreading rapidly. Today, hundreds of Britons took to vaccine centres to get their booster shots, heeding the government's advice.
The queue trailed out of the hospital gates and down the street. The stark warning of an imminent tidal wave of Omicron prompting a massive surge of vaccine uptake at hundreds of vaccination centres across the UK. The Prime Minister visited a vaccination centre to see the work firsthand and broke the news of the UK's first Omicron-related death.
Omicron is producing hospitalisations and sadly at least one patient has now been confirmed to have died with Omicron. So I think the idea that this is somehow a milder version of the virus, I think that's something we need to set on one side and just recognise the sheer pace at which it accelerates through the population.
The mission to offer millions of booster jabs by December 31st will see 42 military planning teams deployed across every health region, extra vaccine sites and mobile units, extended clinic opening hours to allow people to be jabbed around the clock and at weekends, and the training of thousands more volunteer vaccinators. Hitting the government's target would mean 1 million jabs being put into people's arms every single day between now and the end of December, and that's never been achieved before. Currently, the NHS is managing around half of that. But the importance of trying has been emphasised by new modelling, which shows that in some circumstances, Omicron could cause double the number of hospitalisations that Delta did a year ago. And the booster jab gives 70% protection against infection. New rules on wearing masks and working from home have now also come into effect in England. Passenger numbers on public transport have dropped significantly and many businesses are cancelling their end-of-year parties.
That's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. You can also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, or like us on Facebook, and sign up for our breaking news alerts via WhatsApp. We're also on Izumi Media and bus terminals, as well as screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also hear us on Mix 96.9 FM and Capital Media HD 99.3 FM.